election of the president. If he is a man, or if the candidate is a man, he always bring with his wife, even though they are not a good couple. They may quarrel with one another, but in front of the public, they have to show their love, to one another. So because this is a kind of moral value that our society think it is good, so then we will give a vote to such kind of person. This is also true in the presidential election in the United States as well. You can see most of the candidates, the man and the woman and their children, they're lovely, the family, and with dogs as well. We are so lovely, we are a lovely family. So you can't find, I'm sure, you can't find any candidate for the presidency, just a single guy, a divorced guy, and their children with different colors of parents, they may be the real one, but you can't present this in the public because the public are looking for something else, So everyone in the public, in the political sphere, even though they do not believe in morality in the political sphere, they have to pretend they are the moral persons. And also the people believe that this is something really important. Okay, now, so that is, I want to share with you such kind of ambiguities here. So this is why some of the people, they argue saying that morality does not have a role to play in political world, because from this candidate, the political candidate, we never believe in that. They are just a kind of, showing that they are a good person, but in reality, this is never true. Even though they want to appeal to your moral values, moral standard, but you can't believe in it, because once they got the power, they will do something else. Well, maybe that is the case in Taiwan, the former president, in Taiwan, there's something happening. Now, my point here is that if this is something happening, then my question is whether we still find the value or the morality that the Christian think, or what Jesus has taught us, has a role to play in the political world. Even though maybe the politician, they will emphasize the importance of morality, but this is only for their political sake. They are not really a moral guy, So this is something that I think is another question that I would like to say here. Now, my point here is, I just, let me say about the idea. Okay, well, 5 more minutes. I just want to bring out an issue here. I think when in a political sphere, we talk about the political capital, okay? That is to say, how a politician can get more, how can I say, political capital in order that he or she can sustain his or her power. But I think another issue is also important. That is what I say, the moral capital. Okay, moral capital. Now, I give you a quote here. It's coming from a social scientist. He defined what moral capital is. Moral capital is that people are capable of making relatively unforced judgments about the worth and rightness of political values and goods, as well as the fidelity, sincerity, and effectiveness of political actors and organizations who embody and pursue these goals. Now, I can just give you some examples here. You may know it. For instance, like the former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. I'm wondering whether he is a good politician in terms of effectiveness. Because during the time of his regime here, he can't stop the violence within the South Africa. But he is the guy with a very solid moral capital, because he had been jailed for 20 years for the sake of the people. Because of these 20 years, it helped him to create a kind of moral capital, and people believe in him, even though he may not be a good politician in terms of effectiveness. So that's why after a term of service, he has to step down. Okay. And another example I can give you, and the woman Aung San Suu Kyi from Burma, even though right now she is still in the house arrest, but she is the guy with something what we call the moral capital. People believe in him, believe in her, because what her life shows us there's something valuable that our society should strive for. Okay, so now I'm not saying that a lot of the politicians with such kind of moral capital. What I'm trying to say here, in some situations, moral capital is so important for a society, especially in a situation of crisis. When people do not know what we should do, we are looking for a figure who is not just effective, but someone who has the morality, making so that he or she can bring the people come together. So this is something, what I say, the moral capital. This is when Jesus said, love your enemy, has to be understood, not in terms of whether it is effective or not, but rather it has to be understood in terms of the moral capital. So this is why I can just give you an example. I do not know whether it's true in your country. For instance, like a lot of the social activists in China mainland, some of them, because of their criticism against the government, they are put into the jail or they are sentenced for 10 or for 20 years. But what the Chinese government is used to do is after they have been sentenced or jailed for a few years, these people, they will use different kind of excuses to leave the country for the medical reason, going to the States, going to the Japan, maybe to some other countries. Well, on the one hand, you may say, well, it is good for a social activist, to leave the jail, to start a new life. But on the other hand, when they do such kind of thing, they lost their moral capital. They lost the credibility in the eyes of the people. So that's why we do not have such kind of person like Nelson Mandela in China mainland, because all of them, or many of them, they are sentenced into jail. They have left the country. They stay in France, even though they may not have a good life there, but at least they are not in jail. So that's why the people, they are. So we do not have such kind of figure, a moral person, a moral capital can bring the people come together to work for something else. So I think this is something important when in the politics. Now, what I'm trying to say here, I'm not talking about once you got the moral capital, you will be fine, you will be make the change of the society. If this is so, this is understood in terms of effectiveness. So this is not the moral capital. Okay? So moral capital, the accumulation of moral capital, does not necessarily mean that you will be better off. The country or the society will be better. Otherwise, it is a kind of effectiveness. Okay, not moral capital. But moral capital is something important. We do not know how it can happen and when it will be happening. But it's something important in a society, in a moral sphere, in a political sphere, that can uphold some of the values that most of the people, they may forget for a long period. But in time of crisis, they need such kind of person to give them strength, to give them the meaning. So that's what I'm talking about, the moral capital. Now, if this is something we can understand from this perspective, then I'm going back to the issue of what Jesus has said, love your enemies. Okay. Now, when Jesus said, love your enemies here, now, I just want to share with you 3 things here. I have read some of the books by Aung San Suu Kyi, and she has said something like that. I just give you a quote here. She has said, it is not power that corrupts, okay, but the fear of losing power corrupts those who will it, and fear of the scourge of power corrupts those who are subject to it. So what Aung San